Glad to see so many people here. We're like at the end. I feel like we're almost in, Indiana, because we're so far back in the convention center. But every time we have a session in here, and I always think, oh, there's not going to be anybody here. There's always a full room. So thank you for being here. My name is Kevin Sedetaw. I'm a member of the board of directors at Midwest. And normally I don't tell where I teach, but in this regard, I'm going to. I'm also the director of bands at Michigan State University. And that's important. Well, it's important for many reasons, but the two people that are presenting today, one is a graduate of Michigan State, and one's getting ready to be a graduate of Michigan State. Is that correct? Yeah. Laura did her undergrad at Michigan State in music ed, and then her master's at Central Michigan University. Ryan did his bachelor's in music ed at the University of Michigan, also master's in music ed at the University of Michigan, and now is working on his PhD in music ed. He finally saw the light at Michigan State University. So, needless to say, I'm very proud to introduce them to you. This topic is really important. I'm not sure they're of the age to really understand this. I think I should be doing this, but less hair and more gray, it's like, that's burnout, which they don't have any of. But it's going to be a really terrific session. Please welcome our clinicians.
Okay, can you hear me?
No.
How about now? I'll speak with my authoritative voice. So, first of all, thank you so much for coming. I'm Ryan Shaw. I'd like to introduce Laura Heiler, my co-clinician today, and we'll tell you a little bit about ourselves in a moment. If you're here, it must mean that you care about this issue. Maybe you're taking that first step of 12 and you're admitting you have a problem. Whatever the case, this may not be a session in which we impart expert knowledge from on high. Obviously, everybody's got work-life balance issues that you're working through, negotiating how you want your life to be. Hopefully what we can provide is just some different ways to think about this issue. That's sort of where I step in. As somebody who's doing some research with music teachers, when I talk to busy band directors, I've found out some interesting things about the job that seem to predispose us to some problems here. And then when I talked with my friend Laura and I heard her great strategies, I knew that we might have something good to offer. So that's just sort of a preview of how we'll be thinking about this session today. Laura?
Can you hear me okay? I'll just hold it up a little bit more because I know they're struggling. I'm Laura Heiler. I am currently in my 12th year of teaching band. Started off at a little tiny school for 4 years, taught K-12 program, all the music, and then moved on and did mostly junior high, but assisted high school. And the last 4 years I've spent doing high school and, in fact, a competitive marching band in the MCBA circuit in Michigan. And I have 3 absolutely beautiful children, ages 7, 5, and 2, not busy at all. And I teach in Belding, Michigan, where it's by Rockford, or almost by about a half hour from Grand Rapids. And just a small community, farming community, and I absolutely love it there.
And just a little bit about me. I also have some little ones at home. Those are my kids there, 2-year-old and just turned 5 months. And I taught band in 2 places in Michigan. One is Berkeley, which is a suburb of Detroit, and then sort of near to where Laura taught in Cedar Springs. So we're seeing work-life balance in the news all the time. If you were to search headlines, you'll see this, and depending on what you read, it's either getting worse, it's getting better, it's changing. It's an issue only for working women, depending on the headlines you read. So it's really interesting to see what a prominent issue this is in the news. We're also seeing it all over social media with these sort of memes that travel and sort of depict, again, it seems to be mostly a thing for working women, if you believe social media, pictures of haggard people or the Superman mom character who's sort of struggling to keep it all together. But get ready for a little participation. I want to think about, when you hear this phrase, what do you think? So would you, just with the people right around you, it's only going to be 30 seconds of interaction, but talk to the person there and give them your definition of work-life balance and give them your connotation. When you hear this, what does it make you think about? Ready, go.
I wouldn't even know. I wouldn't even know. I definitely agree with both those, and having time for yourself and getting away and doing something else. My father yells at me all the time, you better get away from that school. That school's going to kill you. So, yeah. Okay. I talk to him all the time. Good man.
5, 4,
yeah, I let it out on
3,
all the
2,
time.
1.
Great, thank you. So, obviously, definitions vary for this. One that I particularly like is this one. Clark says, work-life balance is satisfaction and good functioning at work and home with a minimum of role conflict. So, she conceptualizes this as a sort of place of relative calm, less clash between the role that you play at work and the role that you play at home. There's been some interesting research on this that I want to share just some of the conclusions with you about. First of all, we're finding out this is a really nuanced concept. It's not work-life balance as a singular monolithic thing. We find that it's really mediated by your personality. Some people can handle or prefer more work or more time at work. Some people also in that way prefer and do better with more time outside of work. Also, the circumstances, your life circumstances, your job description at work, as those are in flux, which I'm sure they constantly are for you, your idea of an ideal work-life balance will probably change. We're finding out also that it's not necessarily just about the time spent at work or at home. It really has a lot to do with your satisfaction, your self-esteem, a level of control. If you feel like when you're in your work domain that you are able to step out and handle an issue at home without feeling a lot of pressure from perhaps a supervisor, or in our case, perhaps our constituencies of parents and staff and students, you may feel like you have good work-life balance, even if the time constraints are really demanding. So it's going to depend on some of these things. So just the takeaway from that, it really is a personal thing. It's your desired work-life balance. There's not a concept of, hey, how is your singular work-life balance definition for everyone? So early on, people who tried to study this topic, they tried to sort of find theories that would sort of predict if you were a certain way at work, how would you be at home? And I think these are interesting for you to think about. You may sort of hear these and have your own story resonate with them a little bit. The first theory was called spillover. And what that means is that if you're somebody who has a lot of authority and control in your work domain, when you get home, that may spill over, and you may find yourself sort of calling the shots and really trying to be in control at home. The opposite of that is sort of this idea of compensation, where if you are somebody who is constantly stressed out in a position of power and leadership at work, when you get home, you are the person putting on a Hawaiian shirt, please don't bother me, the person who's in 3 bowling leagues, turns their phone off as soon as they leave school, again, as an effort to sort of make up for the role change there. We also see this a little bit with parents. Some of the research on, for example, young working parents finds that they tend to want to compensate for not being at home more. So they get home and even though they're exhausted, they become super parents, and everything is a Pinterest activity about to happen, and it's an interesting phenomenon. But as we found, while these theories were good, they kind of broke down because they couldn't predict people's activities for very long. Lo and behold, people do some of both. At different times, people sort of spill over perhaps their band director voice and their band director persona into their home. Might not be met with a lot of comfort from their significant other all the time. And at different times, they may compensate and try to really just play a totally different part at home. One of the more recent theories on this, which I really like, and again, we're just trying to offer different ways to think about this, and this is one that I found particularly interesting, is this idea of work-life border theory. So in this theory, they conceptualize workers as people who are sort of crossing a border, almost like an international border, and it's as if work and home are these two different countries. And in each domain, the person who sort of enforces the rules or like the norms of that domain is thought of as the border keeper, right? So if you have a particularly strong-willed person at your house that you live with who says, you're not doing X work-related activity here, that might be thought of as a strong border keeper. In the same way, a boss who plays the same part could be seen as that. I also like this idea of permeations, right? The idea that unless you're, working in a coal mine, in which you can't, have any crossover from your home there, a lot of us now, especially with technology, we're constantly connected to work or home, even though we're in a different domain. So this idea of being at work, but having and fielding phone calls from home, possibly, I know, how many of you have brought, if you have kids, those of us with kids have brought your kids to a school function? Yeah, so that's a pretty common one. Again, certain jobs that's not possible, right? So there are less permeations. And then, the other thing to think of is just sort of how flexible are your borders? How quickly can you switch between two domains? So again, I would encourage you, just as you're thinking about your own story, to maybe think about how this may apply to you. So on the slide about me earlier, I said my wife was an attorney, and as I was starting to work on some research about this, about a year ago, she said, hey, no offense, but we all have work-life balance issues. What's so special about teachers? Actually, I'm being nice. I think she said, hey, you should study me. I spend a lot of hours at the office. What's with this teacher thing? And so I do think we want to think about what is unique about teaching that could lead to work-life balance issues that's different from a heart surgeon or anyone else. One thing to know is when they do national surveys of all professions, teachers are actually, they consistently cite themselves and their stress levels as very high, even in comparison to all professions. And not to say that teaching is the only one. Nurses report quite a bit of stress, air traffic controllers, but we're up there, and we've consistently been up there. It also seems to be getting worse. So there's a MetLife survey. They do this MetLife survey of the American teacher every year. And in the 80s, about 35% of teachers reported being under great stress at least once a week. And then in 2012, that was up to 51%. That's a pretty big jump. And we could theorize about why that is: accountability standards, increased paperwork. There's probably a number of things. But the point is, it's not getting better. The other thing to know is that teaching, like nursing and some of these other professions, are not just jobs where you go and punch in and punch out. I know I'm preaching to the choir, you know this, but you are also expected, in a sense, to be professional carers, right? There's this essence of kids are under your leadership, and we know that teachers report being affected by what they call nurturance suffering. So the more that they sort of feel like they need to nurture and help struggling students, the more it can weigh on them and sort of like be this added job dimension that some of them didn't necessarily know they were signing up for, was that high level of caring. And finally, we know that burnout and turnover are high. The amount of teachers, and music teachers, we tend to do a little worse on this scale, who retire or change careers, after the first 5 years is almost half, right? And that's not good for us. That's really the reason we're so concerned about this work-life balance issue, is we need to keep great teachers in the field and keep them energized. And right now they're leaving at too high of a rate. I saw something recently, the median teacher age in the 80s, median years of experience has dropped from 14 to 1. So right now the median year of teaching experience is just in their first year. Problematic. So obviously we know that us music teachers, band directors, we have some more kind of quirks than other teachers as well. There's some pictures of me singing karaoke at my band Lock In. There's me atop the Rockefeller Center on a band trip with my high schoolers. So obviously we have more of this blending of domains. If you think back to the diagram, our borderland in the middle is sort of where we live a lot of the time, and we'll talk more about that. It's not as easy to sort of turn off being Mr. or Mrs. whatever and go home when you constantly have an evening assignment, a booster meeting, a trip, a band camp to deal with. Where are we in this picture here, Laura?
Well, this is another part of our busy career. This is at our state finals at Ford Field in Detroit, and this is a picture of the group right afterwards in front of our semi-trailer.
How long were you together that day?
That day, I think I spent about 16 hours with them that day. Yeah.
And here's another good shot of Laura with the
That's
kids.
my drum majors, and that was right after a performance. It's a lot of relief after the amount of hours that we spend those 2 months together.
Now I know you know this, but I went through and some people that I was talking to about this issue didn't really know the extent to which some competitive marching band directors were. So I kind of made a chart. Does this feel like anyone's schedule? I would think of this as an extreme end of a spectrum, but it doesn't mean that there aren't a number of you in here who have something like this. And you can see that there's no break, really. There's no off-season. I know some competitive marching band instructors who feel like this December time is more restful than their summer break, right? Anybody? Yeah. So we have this issue where we are, in a sense, and we'll talk about this more, we've created these sort of monster programs that really pull us in all year long. And even when we're in one season, a concert music season, we're doing all this planning and having meetings for the summer and the fall. I found something from the 1930s in the Music Educators Journal. I'll read it to you. Social engagements? Music teachers haven't time for them. I thought we were unique until I heard my friends wailing that their husbands were busy every night of the week with a rehearsal or a program or a basketball game. And of course in the fall, every weekend is shot to pieces with football, for which ever new and snappy band stunts must be invented and practiced to letter-perfect precision. So this was a letter to the journal. An updated version would be more gender neutral, right? But this has been going on now for a long, long time. What I'm a little concerned about is that what happens is it's an incremental buildup. And when I talk to teachers about, do you find yourself constantly just signing on for one more little thing, they usually say, yeah, actually, over time I keep accepting more responsibility. So I compiled sort of a list of things that I've heard myself say in the past, and I'm wondering, if you see one of these that sounds like something you've said, can we just do one more sort of a, raise your hand if this feels like something you've said in the past? Yes, look around. So these things build up incrementally is the point. And somebody had a nice term for this that I read in the research literature. They said there's sort of this dilemma of teacher conscientiousness. Again, we know that as music teachers especially, we don't do what we're doing for some great compensation package, otherwise we'd be in a different field. What we do it for, and this is true to all teachers it seems, is for that feeling of connection with the student, the sort of psychological rewards of teaching. And the problem with that, again, is that the more you do, the more is expected of you, and it's an incremental process. Some people have actually gone ahead and found that when they interview teachers that they sort of describe it as like a religious calling. And again, I think this can be a little bit of a problem for us if we think about what we do as this calling or this sense of vocation, because again, then it sets up an atmosphere where the more I sacrifice, the better I feel about the job. And there's almost this sense of becoming a sort of sacrificial monk who only derives any sort of professional good feeling from doing more and more and more, putting the students first all the time. Of course, the problem with this is that eventually we know that we all have sort of a personal giving capacity, and when you exceed that and you get beyond it, it can lead to burnout. You start to feel disillusioned because you're not getting enough back from people, and you're just extending yourself. What I'm seeing, again, turning to social media and things like that, is that I think we're treating this, we're not talking about it a lot as a field, except to treat it with a sense of sort of dark humor, right? So I don't know if you can read it in the back, but this is a day in the life of a band director. It starts at 5:30 a.m., says arrive at band room, cry for a good half hour, violently sob for the last 5 minutes. And various stressful things happen until 9:30 p.m. Lock yourself in practice room and sleep using first suite and E-flat parts as blankets. I think it's very funny. I also think it's in some ways not funny, right? To treat it this way. Here's a quote from somebody who was involved in a research study I did. He said, my wife at the time, she had a club. She called it the Band Director Widows Club. So she and some of the other director friends, all their significant others, would go to our marching band shows because they knew during the marching season, you're not going to see your husbands or your wives. Again, I think an example of dark humor in this case, right? We'll call it the Band Director Widows Club. We'll get together and go. I think what you find, though, again, I'm not trying to be depressing here, but people arrive. No. You never know how things will play. This was here because you would come to a precipice, a point at which bad things might happen, is my idea. And again, here's a quote. Here's a quote from a high school marching band teacher who I interviewed about the really real consequences of this lifestyle sometimes. He says, I've seen relationships falling apart, marriages falling apart, and so on. Watch that within our own family. 3 band directors in our family, okay? My wife's sister married one, my sister married one. We're the only ones that are still married at this point. A lot of that has to do with balance issues. That brings it home, that's real. Here's another teacher I interviewed. He said, I'll be honest, in the last 4 years, I've had a heart attack here at school. The show we did, 7,000 pounds of tarp on the field, a full 90-foot wall, a choir that came out, full uniform change in the middle of the show. It was unbelievably spectacular. And what happened to him was that his color guard instructor quit halfway through, required him to do a lot more. And he said he was just living at school, 1 meal a day, no sleep. Finally, friends said, you look really gaunt. You look like you're going to die. And that day, an ambulance got called to school, and he had suffered a minor heart attack of one kind and went home. This stuff is real. I mean, I'm not trying to say that this is going to happen to everybody who engages in this lifestyle, but I think we do need to think about it. So I'm going to turn this over to Laura a little bit, and when she and I have talked, we've talked about what are some of these things that might inhibit your desired work-life balance.
One of the pressures that I first encountered when I first came to my this most recent school was they had an ice cream social for me. I was meeting all these parents, a lot of kids, new to the community, and one of the first things they walk up right here, to inhibit this is, we're going to state finals this year, right? Okay. Hi, I'm Laura Heiler. Nice to meet you. No, we will make top 5. I mean, the pressure just started right away, and I wasn't gonna lie, I was absolutely new to that side of competitive marching band. So here I had this pressure and the pressure of learning on what to do. And the time commitment and the workload, we all know that definitely can be an inhibitor. And one of the things that you find us doing is working late, extra hours, parent-teacher conferences, band boosters meetings, going to work on Sunday, don't have the program done yet, got to get this practiced here, we have to get this ready for this concert. And these are all major inhibitors. And the blended domain, when do you stop being you? When do you stop being Mrs. Heiler? I know he had found in his research too, and I find it myself living in a community now where I'm only 10 minutes from my school. The major grocery store is in the town that I live in, and I'm constantly seeing parents, grandparents, oh, that was a great this and this and this and that and this and that. And I finally, I know we'll talk about this later, but I had to worry about, can I go to the grocery store in my yoga pants and sweatshirt or my hat and not take a shower the night, or I didn't get, I didn't have any makeup on or anything. Those are all inhibitors.
Yeah, another teacher in my study talked about driving 3,000 miles to Florida. Wanted to just sort of get away from school for a week and was sitting at a baseball game during spring training and sat down and they went, "Hey!" And right behind him were three parents and their kids from his band program, and he was like, "Please, please don't call me Mr. his last name."
And we all know, look at that right there, perfectionist, type A, control freak. That's us. I mean, to a T. That definitely can be an inhibitor to work-life balance, and there are definite ways that you can work around that to make it so much better for yourself.
I know that one thing that I actually feel is kind of like therapeutic can be is to share a story. If you've run into like a really challenging situation with this. I know when Laura and I first talked, one of the really powerful stories she told me was, again, about this sense of blended domains. She talked about having a student come in who really needed your help.
Yeah, and the long story short was, at this time, you guys know, we developed these relationships with these kids and we become very close with them. And my kind of aha moment was, was I blending too much? But she had come in and said, cut me a game, can I please put my wallet in here and lock it up? Absolutely, bring it in. And I just knew something was wrong, and I said, what's going on? And I've never seen, she's always so upbeat, so positive, and it just flew out, the tears. Here we become the counselor too, and she was homeless, 18 years old, I would have no clue, hadn't had a hot shower in a week, she was bouncing from home to home to home to home, and I instantly had 3 small children at home, and that was the moment of aha. I went right away and just said, come live with me. And I've never done that at that point in my life, but that was my moment of blending and am I going too far? But, talked it over with the counselor and the principal, and that was my moment.
And we hear also, I've heard in my research, people talking about being at home and being on Facebook and then seeing that a student that they have is talking about hurting themselves and wondering, like, what do I do here? Do I jump into this conversation, and then realizing it's 1 in the morning and they've been as a part of this online, and another student talking about it was the day before a break and they were sitting in their room trying to get done and get out of there, and a student was nervously hanging around and then came in and said, I think I want to come out to my parents and come out as gay and talk to my parents about this, and could you sort of give me some advice? I mean, so again, these are issues we face because of the close relationships we have and the blended domains, but it's always good to hear. I mean, are there any that are really coming to mind that you would feel comfortable standing up and using your band director voice and sharing?
Go ahead. Yeah.
I run a leadership unit with 9 people on the weekend, and I spend 3 hours with my marching youth, and then we do Kabbalah leadership for an hour to 2 hours afterwards. Unfortunately, one of my females did not feel comfortable going to her parents about protection, and she wound up coming to me.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes?
I teach college youth club, and I also maintain, I'm a private little RAPS beforehand. One of my students, this is a new experience for me, but he's going through the process of transgender from female to male. And I have been working, kind of speaking with him from the perspective of, again, just kind of falling into that counselor role, completely outside of anything I was prepared for as an educator. And he called me last week at 11:30 p.m. to say that he was finalizing, going through his name change, and that he wanted to take my first name as his middle name, because I was one of the few people who supported and stood behind him in his decision. So that was kind of a major lead through in working on it.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. That's a powerful story. And I think we could, if we had time and we turned to each other, we would probably all have variations on the same story of times where our 2 domains butted up against each other. So what I found from talking to both Laura and some of the other teachers in this study I did was that, first and foremost, people who felt like they were on the right track were setting hard and fast personal rules, kind of lines in the sand that they would not cross, if at all possible. One director said, I've decided, we used to have our marching band staff meetings where we listen to tapes on Sundays. I said, no more. Sunday is going to be a day where I don't touch this stuff. Another said that they won't check their work email when they're at home, which can be really hard to do.
I personally had set my boundary. One of my personal boundaries was, and not everybody can do this, but since I have done this, it's made a lot of difference in the balance of my life, because I refuse to have my work email on my phone. Absolutely refuse. I can check it at school, I can check it on my iPad if needed, but on my phone, on my personal device, I refuse to have the work email.
And I think this extends also to not responding to emails that you get late at night until the next day at school. I hear from people that they don't give out their phone number except to one or two people involved in the program. Also, this issue came up of really setting aside purposeful time for family, friends. Can you talk a little bit about your own
Absolutely.
experience?
This is one of my favorite things that has, especially, it doesn't matter if you don't have children, if you have children, maybe you have a significant other, or even a best friend that you've noticed that you've not had time for. One of the life balance strategies that I suggest is making time. And how do you do this? We call these date nights with my 3 kids. Date nights mean the world to them. And a date can simply be, okay, Jonah, you're coming with me to the grocery store, and they think it's a date. I'm getting groceries for the family, but he thinks we're on a date because mommy's spending quality one-on-one time with him, and that means more than anything in the world to them. So I make specific date nights with my kids, or your spouse, or your significant other, or your best friend, is setting that quality one-on-one time, even if it's for coffee, for ice cream. And it's not just once a year. You need to set a hard, fast rule for yourself. I need to do this once a month, and that's it. I need to make time for them, because that will be better for you and for them in the long run.
And I think this is a good time to point out the fact, again, work-life balance is for single people too, right? What I've found when I talk to teachers is teachers who are young and single feel like they end up always getting more stuff thrown their way. Like there's a little bit of a privilege attached to having a partner or kids, because there can kind of be gotta run, I have a game to go to, and everyone understands. It's a little bit harder for us, I think, to say, hey, you know what? I gotta leave right now because my friend and I always get together on Tuesday night at such and such time for dinner, and I need to go home. So just don't forget, this is for you too, okay? Taking care of yourself.
And I'm a very big proponent of this too. I know that we lead such unbelievably busy lives, but I have found that my personal release is exercise, whether it's running, working out. I found that I don't have time to join a gym after school because I have to go pick up kids off the bus. So what I have found is I go in the morning, I work out at our school, and I take a shower right at school, and then I'm ready for the day. And that's what I feel much better. A lot of times, I know that in Michigan that our insurance covers a certain amount of massages. An hour-long massage. I mean, that right there is a huge stress reliever. Eating right, and we're going to get to that one later. I know that we tend to eat out a lot, but there are a lot of ways about that too. And just knowing your coping style. What is it that is your coping style that's healthy? Another coping style that I have, I'm much different from my colleague. I am, well, the kids say I'm OCD and compulsive and have to have everything organized, but I'm a cleaner. Once things are clean, I can release that stress. I do it at home, I do it at work. That's how I cope with things.
And honestly, there's a lot of literature on coping, and there are healthy and unhealthy ways to cope.
Yes.
You'll probably see some unhealthy coping at the Hilton Bar later.
There's nothing wrong with that sometimes.
It's true, but obviously what people find is that long-term, problematic coping is avoidance, right? Getting that email that you know is going to stress you out and you feel your blood temperature rising, and close that. So too much avoidance for too long tends to build up. And the other one is, again, these unhealthy coping mechanisms of drinking, smoking, other unhealthy things. Because again, they're maybe short-term, but not good in the long term. A few others that I found, I know from talking with Laura and others, is finding this support system. Can you talk about your own?
Absolutely. Another thing too, especially even if you're alone at home too, or if you have a spouse or a significant other, just find that one person at work you work with, one or two, and have someone that you can, in the middle of the day, if something really irritated, you don't want to bring that home with you. See if you at your lunch, find that group to sit down with and vent and get that frustration out so that you're not holding it in all day long and then going home and having it at home, or going home by yourself and not having that there. And communication with a partnership is very, very much needed. A family member, your mom, your dad, your brother, a sister, someone. And then one particular one that we have developed, I think it's been 4 years now. Yeah, no, it's been 5 since I've been out of that district. But we developed a women's band director club, and I guess it's become quite popular around West Michigan. There's a lot of people that like to join us, but we're pretty secretive. No, we're not. But we have a women's band director club, and there are 6 of us, and we call it the club because we are all women band directors. We all have children, and we all live a very busy life, and we make time once a month. We have a private Facebook page where when it's interesting. You should see us when we try to put a date out there. It's just unbelievable just to try to organize it, but we make sure we make time for each other because we need each other. We support each other. We support each other in our personal lives, and we support each other in our music lives. So that's finding someone in your district or a group of friends or before a district meeting or a meeting that you do, some sort of organization, meeting ahead of time with those other directors and forming those relationships.
I'm curious, how many of you have somebody at school that you would say is sort of your venting buddy? Yeah, I know that this was really common for me, and for me it was the choir teacher at my first job. Of course, obviously there's a flip side to this that we have to be worried about, that we have to be a little bit worried about, and that's isolation. We know that music teachers are really commonly the most isolated teacher in the building. Often it has to do with where the room is, right? Sometimes I felt like I could have not showed up for a day and nobody in the main office would have known. But it can be hard. If your co-complaining, venting friend is in your wing and you never get out into the rest of the building, that can be a problem for you professionally too. It's a different topic, obviously. Can you talk a little bit about this side?
Oh yes, this is my other strategy that I have seen, and once again, you may already do this, so please, I apologize, but sometimes it's helpful to reinforce this, and sometimes maybe this is the smallest things that can make a huge difference in your life. We have rehearsals, and then we have marching band days where we're going all day for our competition. So what we do is personally in my life, my kids, they just want to see mom's face. If I'm gone that whole time, so we FaceTime. If they get that time with me on FaceTime when I have a break, it means the world to them, and it helps your significant other too with that break and talk about anything you need to. Also, when we talked about meals, I know we eat out a lot. And sometimes to avoid that, say, well, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to make anything. Well, when we do have time off in the summer, we do, specifically this summer, I took a little class, and I, in 1 hour, there was a Pampered Chef one, and in an hour I made 5 delicious meals, and they're freezers, and you put them in the freezer, and then when you're in the middle of a busy season, you're just pulling out a nice homemade meal and putting it in the crock pot for the day, and it's ready for the day. I take time in the summer to really find some meals that's going to work for my family and make them ahead of time when it's not busy, so that when it is busy, we're not eating out all the time and not dragging down with that. And then setting up breaks and extra help for your significant other. I know, gentlemen, this would mean the world to your significant other. If you're gone the entire day, I know we say we can do it all, but we can't. And it's nice to have that adult break. So even if you find a friend or you find a babysitter for a couple hours so that they can go get their nails done, go to this, do this, go shopping, get groceries by themselves while you're gone all day. Providing that adult interaction if you're gone the entire day is a huge role in being a proactive strategy for sure.
Continuing on, this is one that it's a little bit harder to pin down than those strategies like stockpiling nutritious meals, but I do think this could end up being one of the most important ones, and that's just being open to changing things, which can be hard when things have always been done the way they've always been done, right? Going back to like that pressure of maintaining the program and its reputation. I know one of the teachers I talked to said, look, I was hired here to continue our tradition or make it better. And there's like a weight I feel on my shoulders of that. And as a result, this particular teacher came in and the second year said, you know what, I want to not go to this BOA competition because we got accepted to the Macy's Day Parade. And he thought his boosters would be really excited, and they cried. Some of the boosters cried out of sadness that he was changing a tradition, right? We're kind of tradition laden in our profession sometimes, and it can be hard for us to kind of take a step back and go, okay, well maybe I can do something a little different to improve this. Can you talk about? Doing less work.
Yes. Yes, one of the personal examples I found, actually he had shared with me through his research when he was doing this originally. One of the directors had done this in a competitive band personally. In a competitive marching band, we practiced 2 nights a week, Saturdays all day, summer rehearsals, and this director had suggested I let go. And it wasn't necessarily, we think, oh, we need quantity, we need all this time, we need to practice, we need to practice, we need to practice. Well, really, it's about quality, isn't it? So he had suggested, and he tried this, and their program is just as successful, and I tried that this year, and I let go, and we only rehearsed 1 night a week, and only 1 night a week, and a couple weeks in the summer, and we did better this year than we ever have, because they had the quality time.
Yeah, and in addition to the quality of the time, this director that we're speaking about found that he was burning out his kids less, right? There's certainly a point at which students can only be pushed so far, and it starts to become less fun, and they start to maybe not achieve as high. Obviously, I shared that troubling story of that teacher who was not delegating, and that was an aha moment for him. He really found after that he really needed to delegate quite a bit to other adults who were involved with his program and to kids. And I don't know if you can talk about how you've done that.
This is the one I'm the most passionate about, is letting go and delegate. And this is probably the hardest thing for us to do as a profession. We need to be in control of everything. We've got to know this, and it's got to go here, it's got to go there, and we need to know where this is. But one of the most important things I have found in 12 years now, and I started doing this only a few years ago, is when you let go and you delegate, you don't have to relinquish all your power, but those people feel this sense of, they feel very involved in your program. Number one example, I have an amazing boosters group right now. I know some people struggle with their boosters, but I let them do just enough, and they know that their role is to support me and what I need done for the program. They do the little things that I don't have time to do, setting up this, getting the lunch ready, doing this, doing that. All those things, I learned to just ask for help, because there are so many of those parents out there that want to help you. And another thing that I did too is I developed a leadership council within the band. And they have to audition for, or not audition, they have to fill out a form, they have to be interviewed. And that leadership council has been my saving grace too. Because not only those students, they don't feel empowered, they have a training. We give them a whole day training of what it takes to be a true leader. That group right there, in a sense, all right guys, we have to have a rehearsal, we have to, we didn't get anything done, let's make the call list. Boom, captains, drum majors, section leaders, all get on their phone trees, calls, tell what's going on, put it up here on this. It's things like that they can do. Freshman pre-camp, I assign each leader to work with a freshman individually, when the kids work each with each other, and just hearing it from me. So letting go and letting people in your community have ownership makes a world of a difference. Letting people help you.
And again, I know that this is a tough issue for us because doing more for kids often feels really great. right? I can think of teaching and having that really interested student who I had just sparked something in earlier, and they wanted to sit down at the piano after school and sort of like work at something out that they had just figured out, and I wanted to hang out with them and help them do that. It was a fun thing for me. It felt rewarding. But at the same time, like I said, incrementally, those things can build up to the point that it doesn't feel like you can get out. It doesn't feel like you have anything else outside of school, which can be tough. One of the things that I found from talking to teachers is that nobody finds their ideal work-life balance easily, right? There's a trial and error period. One person I spoke with talked about he was actually, his wife was his color guard instructor, which probably blended his domains even more than it would have otherwise. And he said, we just kept sort of trying different things. So we tried, again, some of those hard and fast rules. In June, for a good week or two right after school ends, I'm going to just totally get off of my email, not speak with anyone from school, and that was an incremental step. And then it became from 4 to 6, even on days where we have a rehearsal at 6:30, I go home, no matter what. And this trial and error process can be messy. And this person was saying, look, give yourself permission in the first few years of your job to have to require more time at work, right? To any position, to learn the ropes, requires some more work. It's hard, though, to then figure out, well, have I been in it long enough now that I can back it off, right? One person I spoke with said, early on, our music library was a total mess, and our instrument inventory was a total mess, and there were no organization systems for this and this, and they felt like in those first few years they had spent a lot of extra time at school, and then they said, I had a wake-up moment 7, 8 years in where I realized I don't need to organize the music anymore, but I'm doing it because I'm used to doing it, and it just sort of feels like a mindless activity that I'm supposed to do, and it took longer than they would have wished to back off. And again, just the realize that you may have to sort of cross the line before you figure out what that line is, and then make it sustainable. Sort of jokingly, when we were speaking with some colleagues, we were saying, how do we end this conversation? And they sort of jokingly said, I would say just shrug and say good luck and then get out of the room. But part of that is going to be true. There's no silver bullet. I taught for 6 years before getting into this grad program. I'm sure people with 20 years experience know more about this in general than I do, and people with 30 years know even more. But again, it's not a thing to learn about like fingering systems on instruments. It's something that's going to be personal, and it's going to be in flux, and it's going to change. So what we're trying to do is just provide this way to think about it. One of the things that I want to sort of like challenge you with a little bit, and like maybe leave you with something that goes, oh, maybe that's me, maybe that's my problem. I thought this was a really sort of challenging quote, again from the teacher in my study. He said, we're dealing with a profession, it's us band directors, that can also be very ego-driven. And when somebody aligns their self-worth to their job to the extent that a lot of band directors do, he said, I mean, think about it, you have to have a certain ego, right? To do this job and to want to be in charge and on the podium and up there on a Friday night on the ladder, you have to have that certain ego. But if you're feeding on that nonstop, the need to feed the ego can soon sort of overtake what you're really there for, right? Which is the kids, and giving kids a great musical experience. And that was sort of his takeaway mantra after crossing the line too many times, having what he described as ruined vacations, right? I don't know if anyone has experienced this where they went away, there was this email that was just sort of felt like it was lodged in their brain about a problem that they just could not shake. And it really just ate away at them and ruined their weekend that was supposed to be carefree and fun. Another person I talked to mentioned the same thing, which was that he said it was the teacher I spoke with who had suffered that tough heart attack and had later gotten divorced. And he said, it just felt like my spouse, she would always say to me, you're thinking about band, aren't you? And he'd go, yes, I am. And then he would try to sort of get out of it, and they'd talk, and he'd ask a question, and then she'd be talking, and they'd be at dinner, and she'd go, I can tell you're thinking about marching band. Yep. And it just ate away at him. So these are tough things to be challenged with. Do you have anything to say in closing, Laura?
No,
we take some
I
questions?
just want, we'll definitely, I know we're just about out of time, but we can stay and answer any questions if you like. I know we're not experts, but I'm very passionate about this manner, and I think it's really important for everyone to have great life balance in their profession.
Is there any question just for the good of the room that we'd like to address? Yes?
Not really a question, but more of a comment. Music educators, we serve a lot, we wear a lot of different hats. It's important for our students to see that we're taking care of that work-life balance as well. And if they can see that you're being proactive in your life and trying to find that balance, that's going to go off on them. That's going to be really make a big impression on them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you couldn't hear in the back, he was just saying it's important for us to model this work-life balance for our students so they see it. Any other question or comment? Yes?
You put up there about something with, in the first few years, give yourself permission to spend more time, put a little bit more of yourself into work to get things set up. But at the same time, you're commenting really early that those are the burnout years.
Yeah, exactly.
And we all know that once you take on a responsibility at work, it's so hard, especially in the eyes of the administration.
Once you set that precedent, right, it's difficult. And that's a really good point. I meant to say that earlier. We have these two competing things. One is give yourself permission in those first few years. The second is the first few years are the make or break time and people are leaving the profession, right? So there's no easy answers there. And I don't mean for the takeaway to be work yourself to death in the first few years. But I think it is realistic to know that it might take you a little while to learn your routines and how to be efficient in the way you want to be. Anything else? Yes?
I was just wondering if it's possible to get copies of PowerPoint.
It is, yeah, very possible. If you email me or Laura, we'd be happy to provide anything. And actually, this pink handout was
It has our
Laura.
emails on it.
Yeah, it has most of this information, and I'd be happy to provide you too with like the sort of formal research study write-up I did about this. If anyone's a research nerd like me. Okay.
Don't email you on Sundays, though, right?
No emails on Sunday. That's
The
right.
bright pink handout has our email addresses on it. Very fitting for my personality.
Thank you so much for coming.